They say that life is a tapestry woven from the choices we make. But what happens when a choice, born from desperation and a mother's fierce love, unravels over time, only to be restitched by the hands of fate? What if the son you gave away to save his life becomes the very man who holds your life in his hands 25 years later? "Ethan, please, please, you have to forgive me." The desperate cry echoed through the sterile white hallway of Chicago Central Hospital. On the cold, unforgiving floor, a woman sat crumpled in tears. Standing before her, his face a mask of stone, was a man in a crisp white coat. This was Dr. Ethan Gable, a brilliant cardiac surgeon. And this woman was the mother who, 25 years ago, gave him away when he was just a 5-year-old boy, suffering from a congenital heart defect. Poverty had forced her hand. She'd given up her son, married another man, had a daughter, and built a new, happy life. But fate, in its cruel and mysterious way, had brought them back together. The abandoned boy, now a graduate of a prestigious university, was the head of cardiac surgery at the very hospital where she was now a patient. After a quarter of a century, mother and son were face to face. Would this reunion bring revenge? Or could it possibly bring forgiveness? The story begins in November of 1999 in a cramped, single-room apartment on the far outskirts of Chicago. The sound of a child's cough was a constant, haunting rhythm in the night. Sarah, 29 years old, laid a hand on her son Ethan's forehead as he slept fitfully. He was burning up again. "It's okay, Ethan. It's okay. Mommy's here," Sarah whispered, her own voice trembling. She tried to sound calm, to soothe the small boy. "Mommy, my chest hurts," Ethan whimpered, his tiny hand clutching at his heart. Every breath looked like a struggle. Sarah scooped him into her arms and ran through the cold night to the nearest hospital. The emergency room doctor's words hit her like a physical blow. "His congenital heart condition has worsened. He needs surgery immediately." How much will it cost?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. The doctor's answer made the world spin. "We estimate around $25,000. $25,000. It might as well have been $1 million. Sarah's entire monthly salary was just over $400. She worked the night shift at a factory and washed dishes at a diner during the day, but it was never enough to cover the medical bills and their basic living expenses. Her life became a frantic blur of work. She woke at 4 a.m. to knead dough at a bakery, cared for Ethan in the morning, worked the diner in the afternoon, and then went to the factory all night. She was running on less than 4 hours of sleep a day. Then, one afternoon, she saw a sign outside a plasma donation center. $25 per donation. Without a second's hesitation, she walked inside. For her son, she would do anything. But after repeated donations, her body, already weak from malnutrition and exhaustion, finally gave out. She collapsed on the sidewalk. A man found her lying there. He was Richard, a 40-year-old owner of a successful construction company. He rushed her to the hospital. "Are you all right, miss?" Richard asked, his voice filled with concern. "Thank you," Sarah mumbled, her head bowed. But her mind was racing. Ethan was home alone. "I have to go. My son is waiting for me." She tried to stand, but dizziness forced her back down. Hearing her story, Richard insisted on taking her home. Inside the tiny apartment, he saw little Ethan, alone and shivering with fever. "This is your son?" Richard asked, his heart aching at the sight. "He has a heart defect," Sarah explained, tears welling in her eyes. "He needs surgery, but I don't have the money." Over the next few days, Richard became their guardian angel. He paid for some of her hospital bills and bought Ethan's medication. Sarah was grateful but suspicious. "Why are you doing all of this? Do you want something from me?" Richard smiled. "I just want to help. But if I'm being honest, I've grown very fond of you." Sarah was stunned. "I have a child. I can't accept those kinds of feelings." But Richard was persistent. He visited every day, helping care for Ethan, even finding Sarah a better-paying job. Then, Ethan's condition took a sharp turn for the worse. The doctor's voice was grim. We can't wait any longer. If he doesn't have the surgery this week, he could die. Sarah was plunged into despair. She still had no way to pay. It was then that Richard appeared. I'll pay for the surgery. Sarah stared at him in disbelief.
Why?
Why would you give me that much money with nothing in return? Richard's expression turned serious. Marry me, Sarah. I'll take care of you, and I'll raise Ethan as my own son. Sarah's mind was a vortex of confusion. She was immensely grateful, but she couldn't marry a man she didn't love. I'm sorry. I can't accept your help under those terms. Richard's face hardened. Then I'll offer you another deal. I will pay for the surgery, but afterward, you have to give the boy up for adoption. The word struck Sarah like lightning. What are you saying? Why my son? Richard's voice was cold, devoid of emotion. I want a fresh start, Sarah. A new beginning, with no ties to the past. Sarah's world shattered. That's monstrous. How could a mother? But Richard was resolute. Make your choice. Will you watch your son die? Or will you save his life and give him a chance with a good family? All night, Sarah wrestled with the impossible choice, the sound of her son's labored breathing filling the small room. Mommy, it hurts, Ethan murmured in his sleep. She gripped his hand, her tears falling onto his small fingers. I'm so sorry, Ethan. Mommy is so weak. In the end, there was no real choice. Her son's life was all that mattered. All right, she told Richard, her voice a hollow whisper. I accept your conditions. A look of relief washed over Richard's face. A wise choice. I'll make sure he goes to a good home. But there's one more condition. Sarah looked up. From this day forward, you will never mention this child again. Between us, he will have never existed. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Do we have to go that far? Yes, Richard said firmly. It has to be a completely new beginning. The next day, Ethan had the surgery. It was a success. He's made a full recovery, the doctor said, smiling. He can now live like any other healthy child. Sarah watched her son in the recovery room, her heart breaking and swelling at the same time. Mommy, it doesn't hurt anymore, Ethan said with a bright smile. Thank you, my sweet boy. You're all better now, she whispered, stroking his hair, all the while preparing for the final goodbye. A few days later, Richard arrived with a woman from an adoption agency. Good news. We've found an excellent family. Is he being adopted overseas? Sarah asked. No, a wonderful family right here in the country. They will love him very much, the agent replied. Sarah felt a small sliver of relief. At least he's not going far. Maybe someday I can see him again. But Richard had other plans. He told the agent, do not provide her with any contact information or an address. It's better to have a clean break. But can I at least know if he's okay from time to time? Sarah pleaded. It will be easier for him to adapt to his new family this way, Richard stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sarah couldn't fight back. He was in control of everything. The day of separation arrived. Ethan was dressed in new clothes, holding a small bag. Mommy, where am I going? He asked with innocent eyes. A lump formed in Sarah's throat. You're going to meet a new family, sweetheart. They're very, very nice people. Are you coming too, Mommy? Ethan asked, reaching for her hand. The tears she had been holding back finally broke free.
No, honey.
Mommy can't go.
Just you.
Why? He cried, his lip trembling. I don't want to go without you, Mommy. Sarah hugged him with all her might. Ethan, never forget me. And always remember that I love you. But your new family will be better for you. The social worker gently took Ethan's hand. Let's go, Ethan. Your new family is waiting. As he was led away, he looked back, his small face streaked with tears, crying out, Mommy, Mommy. Sarah stood frozen, watching until the car disappeared from sight, the sound of her son's cries echoing in her soul. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. Now we can think about our future. You made the right choice. Sarah didn't answer. A vast empty chasm had just opened up in her heart. A month later, Sarah and Richard were married. She wore a beautiful white dress, but her heart felt heavy as lead. "You look happy," Richard said. "Yes, thank you," she replied, forcing a smile. But in her mind, she saw only Ethan. Where is he now? Is he okay? On their honeymoon, she dreamt of him every night. Richard never noticed. She played the part of a happy wife perfectly. A year passed. Sarah tried to adapt to her new life as Richard's wife. He was a successful businessman and provided her with a life of luxury. But nothing could fill the emptiness inside her. "Honey, why do you seem so sad lately?" Richard asked one evening. "It's nothing. I'm just tired," she lied. But he knew. "You need to stop thinking about that boy. We have to build our own family now," he said, his voice turning cold. "If you keep this up, it will become a problem for our marriage." Sarah said nothing more. She was afraid of him. 2 more years went by, and Sarah discovered she was pregnant. "Congratulations, it's a healthy baby," the doctor told her. Her feelings were a confusing mix of joy and sorrow. "Ethan grew inside me just like this." Richard was ecstatic. "Finally, our own child. Now we can build a truly perfect family." His words stung. Wasn't Ethan our child, too? But she kept silent. 10 months later, their daughter, Chloe, was born. As Sarah held the tiny infant, her thoughts drifted back to Ethan. He was this small, this precious. How big is he now? Chloe grew into a healthy, happy child, and Richard adored her. But for Sarah, every milestone Chloe reached was a painful reminder of Ethan. Ethan would have laughed like that. Ethan would be learning to talk now. When Chloe was 5, she asked, "Mommy, why are you crying?" "I'm not crying, sweetie," Sarah said, quickly wiping her tears. One day, Chloe asked a question that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Mommy, do I have a brother or a sister?" "Why would you ask that, honey? All my friends have siblings. I'm the only one who doesn't." Sarah's promise to Richard echoed in her ears. "You're an only child, Chloe." "You don't have any siblings," she lied, her heart aching. "You have a brother, Chloe, and I can never tell you." That evening, Chloe asked her father, "Daddy, do I have a brother?" Richard's face hardened. "What nonsense is that? You're an only child." "But I saw him in my dream," Chloe said excitedly. "A big brother was playing with me." Richard shot a sharp, accusatory look at Sarah. "Did you say something to her?"
No.
"I said nothing," Sarah stammered. Later that night, Richard warned her. "Never, ever speak of that boy. Chloe must not find out." "But she'll find out someday," Sarah whispered. "No, she won't," Richard said, his voice dangerously low. "I'll make sure of it." When Chloe was 15, she had a school project that required old family photos. "Mom, do we have any old pictures?" she asked. Sarah panicked. The old albums might have pictures of Ethan. "Let's just use recent ones," she suggested quickly. But Chloe was curious. "I want to see what you looked like when you were young." Reluctantly, Sarah took out an old album, carefully flipping past the pages where Ethan might be. "Wow, Mom, you are so pretty," Chloe exclaimed. Then, her finger landed on a photo. "What about this one?" Sarah's heart stopped. It was a picture of her, young and smiling, holding baby Ethan in her arms. "Oh, that's..." She trailed off, her mind blank. "Who is that baby?" "He looks a little like you," Chloe pressed. The truth was a knife in her throat. "That's just a friend's child," she lied. "A friend's child? Then why are you holding him?" Just then, Richard walked in. His face darkened when he saw the photo. "That's nobody. It's not important." He snapped the album shut. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She quietly opened a drawer and took out a small, hidden box. Inside were the treasures she had kept secret for 25 years. Ethan's first pair of shoes, a hospital photo, a tiny blanket with the faint imprint of his fingernails. Tears streamed down her face as she held each item. "Ethan, Mommy thinks of you every single day. Where are you?" Are you healthy? Are you happy? Back in 1999, 5-year-old Ethan was not sent to an orphanage, but to a foster home. The agency hadn't found a suitable adoptive family right away, so they placed him with a temporary guardian. Mrs. Gable was in her 70s and had volunteered to foster a child to ease her loneliness. "So, you're Ethan," she said, her eyes crinkling in a warm smile. "What a handsome boy you are." "Grandma, when is my mommy coming to get me?" Ethan asked. Mrs. Gable's heart ached. The boy didn't understand that his mother wasn't coming back. "Your mommy is very busy right now, Ethan. You'll stay with Grandma for a little while, okay?" Ethan, a naturally sweet and compliant child, simply nodded. Mrs. Gable raised him like her own grandson, showering him with love. He was smart and polite, and it was impossible not to adore him. "Ethan, you must study hard and become a great man," she would always tell him. But sometimes, the absence of his mother was a heavy weight. "Grandma, all the other kids have a mommy and a daddy. Why don't I?" Mrs. Gable would hug him tightly. "Because you have a grandma who loves you more than any mommy or daddy in the world." Ethan excelled in school, always at the top of his class. His teachers praised him. "Mrs. Gable, that boy is brilliant. He could be a doctor or a judge someday." "A doctor?" Mrs. Gable suggested one day. "How would you like to be a doctor, Ethan?" "A doctor?" "Yes." Ethan's eyes lit up. "I want to help people who are sick." As Ethan entered middle school, Mrs. Gable's health began to fail. But she hid her struggles with diabetes and high blood pressure, pouring every penny she had not into her own health care, but into Ethan's tutoring and books. "Grandma, you have to go to the doctor," Ethan would plead. "Nonsense. Your education is more important," she would insist. Fueled by love and a sense of duty, Ethan studied relentlessly. He graduated high school at the top of his class and earned a place at Northwestern University's prestigious medical school. But the tuition was impossibly expensive. Just when they thought all hope was lost, a savior appeared. Dr. Matthews, the director of Chicago Central Hospital. He ran a foundation to support gifted but underprivileged students. "I've heard about a young man named Ethan Gable," he said, visiting their small home. "I will fund his entire medical education. In return, I only ask that he work at my hospital after he graduates." Ethan was overwhelmed with gratitude. He graduated from medical school at the top of his class, showing a prodigious talent for cardiac surgery. He became a resident at Chicago Central and was hailed as a natural. 3 years after he officially became a doctor, Mrs. Gable passed away peacefully. "Ethan," she whispered with her last breath, "having you as my grandson made my life so happy." After she was gone, Ethan felt a profound loneliness. He was truly on his own, but his commitment to medicine only deepened. He would become a doctor that would make her proud. By the age of 30, he was a board-certified attending physician, a rising star at the hospital. But he had a private ritual. Every year on his birthday, he would call the adoption agency. "Has my birth mother ever tried to contact me?" he would ask. And every year, the answer was the same. "I'm sorry, sir. There has been no contact." After 25 years, he had accepted it. His mother had forgotten him. He had learned to live with it. One afternoon in 2024, an ambulance screamed into the emergency bay at Chicago Central. 3 victims of a car accident. The most critical was a 54-year-old woman in cardiac shock. Her name on the chart was Sarah Peterson. Dr. Ethan Gable was the surgeon on call. He raced to the ER. "We need to get her into surgery now," he commanded, recognizing the signs of a massive heart attack. While his team prepped, he went to speak to the family. In the waiting room was a young woman with a bandage on her head and an older man who seemed to be in shock. "I'm Dr. Gable," he said. "I'll be operating on your mother. Please, please save her." The young woman, Chloe, sobbed. He felt a strange sense of familiarity looking at her. She was a medical student at this very hospital. He'd seen her in the halls. The surgery was difficult, but Ethan was the best. He saved her life. Later, he looked at the patient's chart again. Sarah Peterson. The name still tickled at the back of his mind, but he dismissed it as a coincidence. The next morning, during his rounds, he went to check on her. She was still unconscious. As a nurse was tidying the woman's personal effects, a photograph fell from her purse. Ethan instinctively picked it up and froze. It was a picture of a young woman, her face identical to the patient in the bed, holding a small boy. A boy who looked exactly like he had as a child.
His heart began to pound.
He quietly slipped the photo back and went straight to the hospital's records archive. He pulled up Sarah Peterson's file. It listed her as having one child, a daughter, Chloe. But he didn't stop there. He dug deeper, searching the archives from 25 years ago. And there it was, a 1999 surgical record for a 5-year-old boy named Ethan Miller. The mother's name was Sarah Miller. The procedure was a complex pediatric heart surgery. And in the notes, a single line, patient to be relinquished for adoption post-recovery. The date of the surgery was the exact same day as his own. The world tilted on its axis. It wasn't a coincidence. Sarah Peterson was his mother. He was filled with a tidal wave of emotions, shock, anger, and a deep, aching pain. The next day, he walked into her room. She was awake. "Ms. Peterson," he said, his voice cold and clinical. "I have to ask you a question. In 1999, did you authorize a heart surgery for your 5-year-old son, Ethan Miller?" The color drained from Sarah's face. How could you know that?" "Because I am that boy," Ethan said, his voice flat. Sarah stared, her mind refusing to process it. "No, that's impossible. My son he had a different last name. I was placed with a foster mother, Mrs. Gable. She raised me as her own. I took her name." Sarah looked closely at his face, and for the first time, she saw it. The ghost of her little boy's features in this handsome, accomplished man. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is it really you? My son?" "Yes," he said, his voice like ice. "The son you threw away 25 years ago." The shock was too much. Sarah tried to get out of bed, but her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor. "No, this can't be happening," she murmured. Ethan looked down at the weeping woman, the reunion he had imagined 1,000 times turning into a bitter nightmare. "Get up. You're a patient. You shouldn't be on the floor."
Ethan, I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry," she cried, reaching for him. "Is sorry supposed to fix everything?" He shot back, his years of pent-up anger and hurt boiling over. "Do you have any idea what my life has been like for 25 years? I know. I regretted it every single day. I missed you so much. Then why didn't you look for me? Why not one call? Not one letter?" Just then, the door opened and Chloe walked in.
Mom.
"What's wrong? Why are you on the floor?" she cried, rushing to her mother's side. She looked at Ethan suspiciously. "Dr. Gable, did you say something to my mother?" "No," Ethan said, his voice dripping with ice. "I was just checking on her condition." He watched as Sarah lied to her daughter, hiding the truth even now, and a new layer of disappointment settled over his heart. A few days later, a new crisis erupted. Richard, Sarah's husband, suffered a massive brain hemorrhage. He needed immediate surgery, but his own weak heart made the procedure incredibly risky. He needed a cardiac surgeon present during the operation. He needed Dr. Ethan Gable. The irony was staggering. He was being asked to save the life of the man who had orchestrated the destruction of his own. Chloe ran to him, her face streaked with tears. "Dr. Gable, please, you have to save my father." Looking at her innocent, anguished face, he knew he couldn't refuse. In the operating room, as he stood over Richard's unconscious form, a storm of emotions raged within him. But he was a doctor.
He pushed it all aside.
During the complex procedure, Richard's heart suddenly stopped. "He's in cardiac arrest," a nurse yelled. Without a second's hesitation, Ethan began chest compressions, pouring all of his skill and energy into bringing him back. In that moment, he wasn't a vengeful son. He was a doctor fighting for a life. And he succeeded. The surgery was a success. Richard would live. That night, as Ethan sat alone in his office, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Richard. "Dr. Gable," he began, his voice weak. "Can I speak with you? I have to ask, did you have heart surgery about 25 years ago?" Ethan was stunned. "Why do you ask?" "Because 25 years ago," Richard said, his eyes filled with a deep, ancient pain, "my wife gave up a son for adoption. His name was Ethan." Richard looked him straight in the eye. "Is that you?" There was no point in hiding it anymore. "Yes," Ethan said. "I am that boy." Richard sank into a chair, the color draining from his face. "I knew it." Then, he did something Ethan never expected. He began to confess. "It was my fault, Ethan. All of it. I was cruel. I forced her to choose. I made her give you up because I was a selfish, foolish young man who wanted a clean start. She fought me, but I gave her no choice. And for 25 years, she has lived in a prison of guilt and sorrow that I built. Every year on your birthday, she would lock herself in her room and cry. She tried to find you, but I forbade it. I was jealous of a ghost. I was jealous of the love she still had for you." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But please, please, forgive your mother. She never, ever stopped loving you." The confession shattered the wall of ice around Ethan's heart. His mother hadn't abandoned him. She had sacrificed herself for him. The next day, he went to her hospital room as she was preparing for discharge. "Mom," he said. At the sound of that single word, Sarah burst into tears. "Dad told me everything," Ethan said softly. "Oh, Ethan," she sobbed. "I missed you too, Mom," he whispered, finally letting his own tears fall. She pulled him into a hug, a real hug, 25 years in the making. Later that evening, they told Chloe everything. She was shocked, then confused, and then a slow, wondrous joy spread across her face. She had a brother. From that day on, Ethan's life changed. The emptiness that had haunted him for so long was finally filled. He had a family. He had a mother who cooked for him, a sister who adored him, and a stepfather who, in time, he would learn to call Dad. He established the Sarah Foundation at the hospital, a scholarship fund in his mother's name to help underprivileged children receive the life-saving medical care they needed. Years passed. Ethan proudly walked Chloe down the aisle at her wedding. He, too, found love with a kind nurse at the hospital, and they married. When his own son was born, he placed the baby in Sarah's arms. She looked down at her grandson, tears of joy streaming down her face. The son she thought she had lost forever had come back and given her the whole world. "He looks just like you, Ethan," she whispered. That Sunday, the entire family was gathered for dinner, 3 generations around one table. Laughter and love filled the room. Richard, now a doting grandfather, looked at Ethan and smiled. "It seems we're finally a complete family." Ethan looked back at the man who had caused him so much pain and then so much healing and said, for the very first time, "Yes, we are, Dad." The 25-year winter was finally over, and a new season of love had begun. This story is a powerful reminder that the past, no matter how painful, does not have to define our future. It shows us that the threads of family, however frayed, can be rewoven, and that the incredible power of forgiveness can heal even the deepest of wounds, making us stronger and more whole than we ever were before.